Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
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 Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivana Dari.
Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari.
Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivana Dari.
Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivana Dari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivana Dari. Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivana Dari. Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananda Gaura Vaishnava ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prem se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Samakun Vadakun Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavanam ki jai, Shri Maya Purnavidam ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Tos Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada's taken sannyas ki jai, Visvarupa ki jai, all glorious Sama devotees, all glorious Sama devotees, all glorious Sama devotees, all glorious Shishi Guru and Sri Gauranga. So today being the anniversary of the Srila Prabhupada's taking sannyas and of Visvarupa, who is an incarnation of Balaram, is taking sannyas also. So we'll discuss about that this morning. So Srila Prabhupada, he when he first met his spiritual master in 1922, he didn't want to go see him because he had already seen so many sannyasis, and he was disappointed because he'd see them smoking beedis, and sometimes even there would be householders, and they would put sannyas cloth on and go out and beg. You've seen that? So this is Kali Yuga, a lot of cheaters. So he wasn't very impressed with the sadhus. But one friend of his was beckoning him to go and visit this Swami, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He said, "No, I've seen so many of these Swamis. I'm not very impressed." No, this is a special sannyasi. You got to see this. You got to hear this person. So, reluctantly, he went to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he was very impressed. And it's interesting that Prabhupada was paying obeisances to him, and before Prabhupada could even finish his obeisances, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is telling him to go up, preach, preach in the West to the English speaking. He could see that they were educated. And Prabhupada argued with him. And who will hear our message? We're a dependent country. For 2 hours they spoke, and Prabhupada was firmly defeated. He was very happy to be defeated. Basically, he said that the spreading of Krishna consciousness is not dependent on some political arrangements. So Prabhupada, after a meeting with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told his friend that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in very good hands. So, and he actually, he was so impressed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that if he didn't have a family, he was ready to go out and do it, just go out and preach. But he had a family. He was already married and children. But he was thinking, I'll just go out and I'll make a lot of money. And that way they can use this money for spreading Krishna consciousness. So that was his plan. And he did quite well in the pharmaceutical business. He had this, eventually he had this factory, or this warehouse, and he had so many employees. He was actually doing quite well. But there's a statement by Lord Krishna to Yudhisthira, Yasyaham anugrunami hirishitadinam chanai, that you show special mercy to my devotee, I take everything away. And then the family members and everybody thinks, what is the use of this person? So Krishna did that. He took everything away. He was robbed. Because actually Prabhupada, his heart was more in preaching. Although he had his family and he was making money and he knew this had to be done. This was his duty, but his heart wasn't there. So therefore, he kind of let his business go down because he was more preaching. Even though he had this business, he was doing a lot of preaching. And at one point, he was in Jungsi, and that was his best preaching field up to that point. He had a building. I think kind of like the governor gave him this building, and in so many words, it seemed like it was a donation. It appeared. So he was preaching there in Jungsi and other surrounding villages, and he had his first disciple. What was his name? Prabhakar. Acharya Prabhakar. He was a professor, educated, Sanskrit scholar. Yeah, he was a Sanskrit scholar. That was his first disciple. So he was thinking, whoa, now we're getting some preaching going. Now we got it going here. So yeah, he was traveling around different villages around, and people were coming, and it was a nice building. They had not just one building. There was some others there also. So he was thinking, okay, now things are happening. But then the wife of the governor thought, well, this would be a good place for a women's club. And she was the wife. And it wasn't a clear donation. So he had to give it up. He was very upset about that. But then, one door closes, another door opens. So then he thought, all right, I'm going to the West. Then he started making determination to go to the West. And as we heard this morning, Maharaj was saying that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to him in a number of occasions to take sannyas. And what was his feeling? Horrified. He was horrified because he had seen the example of other sannyasis, and he had his family, and he had his business, and so it didn't sit very well with him. But then he started preaching more, and he's writing. He had the BTG, and then he started writing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's doing more and more preaching. Bhagavad Gita. So he's doing so much more preaching. And then again, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came in a dream. And then it finally it sit more comfortably with Prabhupada to take sannyas. So he went to some, I think, Tirtha Maharaj, and Tirtha Maharaj said, well, first you join the mat. Join the mat, and then we'll see in the future, maybe we can give you sannyas, but first you become a member of the mat. There was many, after Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left, there was so many mats, there was friction. And actually that's why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left. He was only 63 when he left this world. And he was actually kind of disgusted because they were fighting over rooms in I think the Bagh Bazaar. There was a nice temple built by one wealthy disciple, and he was a little disgusted. And he said, fire in the mutt. There's fire in the mutt. So he left this world disappointed. And after he left, and there was practically within a year, the preaching stopped. And they went to court about the properties. There were 64 temples around India. It was the most prominent spiritual movement in India at the time. So there were so many assets, and they were in court, and it went on for decades and decades and decades and decades. India courts. Yeah. So Prabhupada didn't want to get involved in that. But there was one god brother, Keshava. Raj is going to give us some nectar, okay.
He also approached B.R. Sridhar Swami, who he's very close to. He would come with a couple other brahmacharis to his home in Calcutta and preach from there. He said, "Would you please give me sannyas?" He said, "Well, I'm close to your family, and I'm not really sure if that would sit well with your wife and family, so I don't think I should."
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know. Little insider there. Yeah, he used to visit the family there. Yeah, so yeah, he would stay there also. Okay. So, but when he went to Keshava Swami, he said, "Yes, immediately you should take sannyas. Without taking sannyas, how can you preach? Immediately." So Prabhupada, okay, let's do it. So that was in Mathura, Kesavaji Mandir, and it wasn't announced, so there wasn't just the local devotees there at the temple were there, but Krishnadas Kaviraj was there, the famous Kirtaniya, who everyone loves so much. Krishnadas Babaji. Krishnadas Babaji. Hey, it's possible. So he's Krishnadas Babaji. He's leading the kirtan, and Narayan Maharaj, he was doing the yajna, and he motioned to Krishnadas Babaji. And he brought down the kirtan a little bit. He motioned to lower the volume of the kirtan. So he lowered the volume, and then he continued with the ceremony. And then Prabhupada motioned to him to increase the kirtan. So then he mentioned after this, he said, "I can understand that this Bhaktivedanta Swami, he's going to preach widely. He's going to have great success because he had a taste for the holy name." Yeah. So now Prabhupada, he's a sannyasi. But he pretty much continued doing as he was doing. At that time, he was doing writing. He started printing. Also, he was going to New Delhi, and some people were thinking, what kind of a sannyasi is this? He's doing all this business, printing, and they couldn't understand the transcendental mood of Srila Prabhupada in spreading Krishna consciousness. So he got some people to sponsor the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sumatra Murarji, she was one of them. Before she gave him that sponsorship for going to America, she sponsored, I think, at least one of the volumes. So, and then he asked her to send him to the West, and she said, "Oh, Swami, you're too old. It's too cold, and you're too old. You're going to die there." And like a loving father, he said, No, it's okay. It's okay. You just give me a sponsorship, I'll go and I'll preach. So he was determined. Actually, it's described that he waited on the steps for 5 hours of the building where she had her. He was just determined. Yeah, to speak to her. And then she came out and she said, "Oh, who is this Swami?" And then the secretary said, "Oh, he's been wanting to speak to you." So then she said, "You come tomorrow, we'll speak." 5 hours, waiting on the hard, stone step. Such determination. Sannyasi. So then she gave him that sponsorship to go to the West. And he, of course, he went. Actually, he unofficially he took Vanapras, and he was preaching. He was preaching so much, before he went to America. But then he thought, but Gurudev, my guru, has told me to go to the West. So he was although he was still preaching, that the importance of following the order of his spiritual master. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this, Vyavasyatmika buddhir ekeha kurnana bahusaka hinanta buddhiyo visayanam. He said this is the mood of a disciple. This is the life and the soul of a disciple is to follow the instructions of the Guru. Vyavasayatmika, one-pointed, fixed determination to follow the instruction of the Guru. So he kept that instruction in going to the West, and he went to America and he was preaching. Not much. He went to was it YMCA in Butler, Pennsylvania? Huh? He stayed. Yeah, he lived there actually. Yeah, he stayed there. He didn't stay at the house. Yeah, he got a room there. But he was preaching at the different churches there, and he was very happy to see so many churches. People are religious. You know, still, this is the only first world country in the world that is so religious. You go to Europe and it's like atheism is like 90% or something. It's like, but still, somehow, it's decreasing. As Kali Yuga increased. And Prabhupada said that you know the reason that there's still so much religiosity and opulence in America? Because it's the only country in the world where on all the currency, it's in God we trust. Yeah, interesting. So religious. Yeah. So that's our forefathers, and because of that religiosity and the integrity of our forefathers of this country, this is also the only country in the world where you can freely go to any university in America, public university, and distribute religious literatures. No problem. And the police will back you up. Amazing. We've tried in other countries. Even India, we couldn't do it. Secular state. They wouldn't let us. We had to go and beg permission from the president of the university. Can we set up a table here and distribute some Bhagavad Gitas? Yeah, go ahead. So we were able to do it, but you had to go and beg. Like in America, you just set up, you just do it. Except for sometimes you have to do a little begging, asking permission. But yeah, and Prabhupada was very fond of America. You know, there was that one court case where we were being blamed of brainwashing. I think it was 76. And Prabhupada thought it's just going to be a long, drawn-out court case. But the judge heard both sides, and he just knocked it right out of court. And he even said that they will always be allowed to, I forgot the exact words, but they will always be allowed to spread their belief in this country. Prabhupada was so pleased. Can someone give the mic to Dravida? He might remember exactly what the judge said. There was a huge thing.
Yeah, Adhikesha was involved.
Yeah.
And he came to Mayapur to get encouragement from Prabhupada. He's in the middle of this court case. He's the one who was on the line and being charged with brainwashing because he was running the New York Temple. And so when the result came down, where the judge said, and the Hare Krishna movement, I forget the exact wording, is a bona fide religion or Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga, And Prabhupada said, "Oh, this is the success of my movement. My movement is now a success because this came out." He really thought that was a very significant thing.
Yeah.
And since then, this whole deprogramming thing kind of lost its, because they were charging the guys with kidnapping. As soon as that happened once, then the rest of them said, "Well, forget it. It's not worth it." Like that. So.
Ted Patrick wasn't very pleased with that decision. So Prabhupada was preaching in America now, and people were coming and practicing Krishna consciousness and learning the philosophy. And Prabhupada considered it an emergency. He needed preachers, so he was sending people all over the world, Australia and Europe and different parts of America and Canada, just all over the place. And then he wanted some to take sannyas. The first sannyasi, of course, was Kirtananda, who disappointed Prabhupada right from the beginning. Prabhupada told him to preach in London. He didn't do it. He went straight to America. Prabhupada was not, he was very disturbed, and then there was some disturbance after that as well. But then he gave others sannyasa. I think there was one sannyasi that he was 19. Did you know that? Risi? I think it was, did you hear about that? Someone was 19? I know Jayapataka Swami, he was 21. He was 21. So he's been a sannyasi for 50 years, yeah. This is the year, it's anniversary this year. 50 years sannyasi. Took sannyas at 21 and went all the way through. Of course, unfortunately, a lot of them couldn't. And that was one of the big criticisms of his godbrothers, that you're giving these young boys sannyas. How are they going to stay sannyas? Unfortunately, about half of them fell down. But there was an emergency. Field commission. When there's a war, and it's there's not many officers. Sometimes they'll give a private, he'll take the position of a captain. They call that field commission. So although some of his disciples were kind of like privates, just kind of new, but he gave them this position of sannyas to preach, and some of them stuck with it. I think Trivikram Swami also, he was one of the early sannyasis, I think 71 or 72, something like that. He's still preaching, stuck it out. So he wanted Krishna consciousness to spread around the world. And when some did fall down, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, in war, some will, what was it, the exact word he said? In war, sometimes there'll be casualties, yes. And he even mentioned one in the Srimad Bhagavatam, during that pastime of Gajendra, the elephant and the crocodile. One of his leading sannyasis gave up sannyas. But this particular time that he was translating this, he mentioned there in the purport that you may not be able to fight in a certain position, but don't give up the fight. You fight from another position. Just like the elephant couldn't fight very well in the water, whereas the crocodile, he could fight well in the water. So you can't fight good in one situation, then don't give up the fight. Take grihastha life, that's all right, continue the fight. And he encouraged devotees that actually the first one to give up sannyas, he went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, one of Lord Chaitanya's disciples, he wasn't able to follow strictly. He was a renunciant, and Lord Chaitanya rejected him. Will you reject me as well? And Srila Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya, he's God. I'm not God. I need all the help I can get. So no, you continue. Continue preaching. Now you're in this situation, a household, still continue preaching. So Prabhupada is very liberal, very kind. And this person did continue preaching. Yes, Raj has another thing to say here.
Gargamuni, he was also given sannyas at one time, and he talked about when somebody had difficulty, say like falling down or this or that, but whatever the case may be, if some devotee, a leader or what have you, had difficulty, Srila Prabhupada didn't push them to the side, this or that. He would put more responsibility upon them. He'd give them some other different service or what have you, and just because it's always the devotional service that will purify the heart.
Thank you. Yeah, and there was one instance where a sannyasi fell down, and other sannyasis were going around, and they were telling others about how he fell down and gossiping, and Prabhupada was so upset. He was so upset. He said, now this person won't come back because of your, defaming him. Yeah. So, Prabhupada, he did come back, yeah. And he had a nice, Prabhupada even said, you have such a nice Sika. Yeah, where's your wife? Where's your child? He didn't criticize. It was amazing. Prabhupada's so kind, So that's Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, he was preaching in Mexico, and there's one reporter was there, and he saw that there was young sannyasis there, and he knew something of the Vedic culture, and he said, my understanding is that someone takes sannyas when they're older, in their elder years. And Prabhupada said to him, what does it mean to be old? And he knew, And then Prabhupada answered it. It means about to die. Now can you say that you won't die before me? Therefore I have given them sannyas. We don't know. So Prabhupada told 4 sannyasis. He said there's 2 don'ts for sannyas. Anybody know what they are? Prabhupada said, after taking sannyas, don't think, oh, I could have had a beautiful wife, but I've taken sannyas. And don't think, I could have had a big home, a nice home, but I've taken sannyas. He said, don't think these 2 things. This is not allowed for a sannyas. So, yeah, it renounced life. It's you living a simple life. It's actually a glorious life to give oneself to Krishna. What is it? Mind, body, and words. This is the vow of the sannyasi. So today is also the anniversary of Visvarupa taking sannyas. Now I was reading yesterday, he's actually an incarnation of Balaram. And what's interesting is that before Sachi had Visvarupa, she had 8 children. They were all girls, and they all died. At birth, So now they have this beautiful boy, so happy. And then, shortly after that, they had Vishwambar. So you can imagine the ecstasy. Then they have, Krishna and Balaram as their son. Imagine the ecstasy. Such fortunate parents. So, Visvarupa, he used to go to Advaita Acharya. He would associate with Advaita Acharya a lot. And Advaita Acharya, he's also God. Right? Mahavishnu. So he's a good preacher. So Sachi, sometimes she would send Visvarupa, go and bring your brother. And Lord Chaitanya would go there, just to maybe 4 or 5 years old, dressed by the 4 directions. And he would go there to Advaita Acharya's home to bring his brother. And it's described that Advaita Acharya saw this child, and he was just amazed at the beauty of this child. He was just astounded by the beauty of Vishwambar, Lord Chaitanya. And Visvarupa also, you can imagine, he's also God, so he also was effulgent. So all these amazing personalities were appearing at this time. So then he got word that, Visvarupa got word that his father is arranging a marriage for him. And as soon as he got that word, I'm out of here. He left. As soon as he got that word, he didn't want to get entangled. So then he went and he took sannyas. Sankar Aranya became his name. And it's described that after some time he left his body, and then he merged with the body of Lord Nityananda. So that was Nityananda and Visvarupa. And there's one pastime where Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they were traveling and preaching. And they went by this one house, and there was one sannyasi in this house. And he had a roommate, a sannyasini. Sannyas. Gosai. So he had a lady living there. She was a sannyasini. So he called Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, come. He was so amazed to see the beauty of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So he blessed him. May you have a beautiful wife and great wealth and opulence. And Lord Chaitanya said, Gosai, why are you blessing me like this? Why? I don't want. Please bless me that I become a great devotee of Krishna. And the sannyasi said, just see, Kali Yuga has arrived. Here I'm blessing you with such nice opulence and such a great blessing, and you don't want to accept it. Without money, what are you going to eat? How are you going to fill your belly? And Lord Chaitanya was like, oh, Kali Yuga is here. So then he said to them, you want some bliss? You want some bliss? And Lord Chaitanya, what is this bliss? And Lord Nityananda, he had been around, or he had been traveling around for like 20 years already, so he knew about these guys. And he said to Lord Chaitanya, it means liquor. He wants to give you some liquor. And as soon as Lord Chaitanya heard that, he jumped up and he ran out of the house and jumped into the Ganges to get purified from the association of this so-called sannyasi. So Lord Nityananda, of course, he's following. He jumps into the Ganges also, and they're swimming along in the Ganges. So this is Kali Yuga. So Prabhupada, became he was such a divine sannyasi, just a perfect sannyasi. There's some instances where some lady disciples, or maybe even bhaktins or something, Prabhupada, if you can speak nicely, and you have some, Prabhupada had he had some tejas. And people are attracted, even young ladies. And believe it, there was a couple of young ladies, and there was one lady, one devotee told me that this girl, she was like a goddess. She was so beautiful. And she kind of approached Prabhupada, not in a devotional way. So Prabhupada told the devotees the next day, this girl here, send her to New Vrindavan. She's too lusty. And there was another instance where another lady also became attracted to Prabhupada, not a spiritual, material attraction. So Prabhupada would send them away. So Prabhupada was actually very attractive, very beautiful, because of that Shakti, that tejas, very. I mean, everybody's attracted to Prabhupada. There was one instance where Prabhupada arrives in an airport, and one of the workers there sees Prabhupada coming, and he starts shouting out, "That man, he's glowing! He's glowing! he's glowing!" So attractive, So, okay. 8:30. Any questions? Any more remembrances or comments? Yes, please, Raj.
So a little bit of the Visvarupa nectar. Mother Sachi held it against Advaita Acharya that,
right.
By your teaching, I've lost my son. And so they were really worried about Nimai. So at one point, Jagannath Mishra, he didn't even want his son to be educated anymore. What's the use? He gets educated, and he'll realize this world is not a place of enjoyment, and he'll take sannyas too. So when Lord Chaitanya was initiated, came back to Navadvip, and was, exhibiting his love for Krishna at the Mahaprakash Lila, he was calling all the devotees to come and get blessed. He would fulfill all their desires, and he called everybody except one.
Mother Sachi.
What about Mother Sachi? No, she's an offender. Everybody's like, what? Mother of the universe? Mother of, how how can you say that? And he said, yes, she has always harbored some ill feelings against Advaita Acharya, blaming him for Visvarupa taking sannyas. So anyway, the devotees persisted. He said, okay, bring her here. And he told her that because you've offended until you become blessed by Advaita Acharya, freed from your offense, you'll not get love of God. And so they had kirtan, and Advaita Acharya went into ecstasy, and at one point he rolled around in the ground, and Lord Chaitanya motioned, now's your chance. And she went and she grabbed his feet, got the dust, took it on her head, and then Lord Chaitanya said, oh, okay, now. And he blessed her.
Yeah, well, that must have been a pretty big blow for her to leave Visvarupa. You know, she had already lost 8 children, and now here there's a beautiful son. She never saw him again. They never saw him again. And there, when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, she said, "Please, don't do what Visvarupa did." You know, and then Lord Chaitanya said, "You just tell me where to go." And she knew that he can't stay there because he's sannyasi. You know, he can't. That'll be, it won't be good. So she said, "Please go to Jagannath Puri," because Jagannath Puri and Navadvip are like, the news is always coming back and forth, and it's, so that's why he went to Jagannath Puri on his mother's instruction.
This is a little Srila Prabhupada nectar with the sannyasa initiation. You mentioned that Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj appreciated he had full faith in the holy names because he wanted that to be the emphasis in the yajna, taking sannyas, not the mantras and the ritual of the yajna. But afterwards, Srila Prabhupada was able to speak something. And he said, I chose to speak in English, although hardly anybody there knew how to speak English, because I was thinking of the order of my spiritual master. I've taken sannyas for one reason, and that is to follow the order of my spiritual master in preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness. So right at that moment, he spoke in English.
Yeah, just Kesava Maharaj and maybe 1 or 2 others knew English, but he just thought, it's my duty to speak in English. This is what I'm been asked to do, to preach this message. And Prabhupada knew English very well. Devotees are amazed sometimes. And he had a way to using the English language, the English words, democracy, demon crazy. What else?
He was Vanaprastha in Jhansi, and he established the League of Devotees there, and had the the bylaws and everything, and the what do you call it? The tenets of ISKCON are based a lot on what he had the purpose.
But that was done at that time. Uh-huh. 7 purposes were done at that time.
He installed one deity, Mahaprabhu deity, in Jhansi, and like you said, the wife of the governor got the building and not him. And Lord Chaitanya, he went to
Mathura.
Pragyakeshwar Maharaj's hut, and so
it's still there.
Yes, he's still there, and and he was overlooking the ceremony also.
That's right. Javita.
First, when we read and hear about Prabhupada's time in India and how, before he came to America, we think, wow, that League of Devotees, he had it going there, and he had high hopes for it, and he had his first disciple, and he was doing a lot of preaching. And then there was, this thing happened with the governor's wife, and he lost the building, and so it all. And I also think about how his family life, wasn't conducive to preaching. His wife wasn't really into it. And I read also, I think it was in the Lilamrita, I hadn't remembered it, that when that manuscript of the Bhagavad Gita, he was ready to publish it, he had written the whole thing there, and it was stolen, it was gone. He suspected his own family because they thought that would undermine his preaching and he would stay. But just the opposite happened. That was, wasn't, that, and of course they're selling the Bhagavatam for tea biscuits, and all that. So, I said, wow, but without that, if he had been able to get the League of the Devotees building, or if his wife had really been supportive in preaching, he wouldn't have come.
He might have stayed.
Christians. It was Christians' arrangement
Yeah.
to make it, really, that he would actually do what would seem completely inconceivable: get on that boat all alone with no money, no. It was the result of the incompatibility in India. And he would preach like that. He said, "I'm having all the success, but here in India, when he first came back, they weren't, so receptive. That whole thing in Bombay, where there was so much opposition." And, of course, now India is much more prominent.
Like every year, another big temple's coming up.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
But I say it's like, thank Krishna for, getting Prabhupada,
Yeah.
impetus to come to America.
Another interesting thing is that from the beginning, he didn't like his wife very much. It was an arranged marriage. And he wanted to have another wife. And his father heard about that. He said, no, it's good. That you don't like a wife is good. Then, when it's time to renounce, it'll be very easy, not difficult. If you have a wife that you like, then it'll be more difficult. So Prabhupada, he was very submissive to his father. He's a pure devotee. His father's a pure devotee. So, okay. That's what you say, that's what I do.
He also understands Srila Prabhupada's mood. He thought himself completely unqualified to follow this instruction of his spiritual master. There were so many senior godbrothers and sannyasis in the movement, and none of them took it up. And it wasn't that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave him the instruction. One of his godbrothers was saying that he gave that instruction to many people, but they didn't take it up.
Well, they went to England, they went to Germany.
But yeah.
No success, though. That
was a failure. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was not pleased with them. So anyway, there's that book, A Dear Friend to All, that describes interviews with people who knew Srila Prabhupada in his Indian days, from times of initiation on up to leaving, for America. And he would, when he was in the area, once or twice a month, he would go to Shantipur and he would pray at the lotus feet of Advaita Acharya for blessings that I've been given this impossible task. And he would just sit in the back of the Kirtan Mandap chanting his japa, and often would be crying, just begging for the mercy. And then when he lived in Radha Damodar Mandir, one devotee, a neighbor next door, he would often hear someone crying out in the night, and he'd go back to sleep. But one full moon night, he went up on his roof and he looked over into the courtyard where Rupa Goswami, Samadhi, and Bhajan Kutir are, and he saw Srila Prabhupada sweeping the courtyard with one of those little Indian brooms and just calling out to Rupa, "Hey Rupa, hey Sanat, please give me your mercy. Wow. I have this impossible." And he would be crying, sweeping, just begging for empowerment, the ability to follow his spiritual master's instruction.
The power of prayer.
There was this incredible fragrance, and he was wearing his garland.
Jhansi.
That was in
Jhansi, yeah.
Okay.
You remember that?
I remember it from the story. I mean, that it was supernatural. Where did all the flowers come from and everything?
Acharya Prabhakar, he smelled it.
Oh, it's Acharya Prabhakar.
Yeah, that's how we know about the story. Like,
yeah.
Where is this coming from? It's like from the spiritual world or something.
Yeah, well, I forget. Did Prabhupada tell him where he got it? Go ahead, Raj.
So it was Janmashtami, and he had gone out to do something. It was Janmashtami, and the disciple Prabhakar Acharya had gone out to do something, and Srila Prabhupada was there alone chanting with his mridanga kirtan. And then when he came back, Srila Prabhupada was chanting and dancing in ecstasy, twirling around and just totally manifesting ecstasy in the kirtan. And he had this beautiful long kadamba garland, and those who've been to India, kadamba flowers, they're
beautiful.
And
fragrant,
quite fragrant. And but he had his garland. The kadambas were like giant. They were very, very big. It's like yeah, where'd you get this?
Where'd you get them?
And so he revealed to him that Krishna came and he gave me this garland, gave me his garland.
Wow. So Prabhupada was preparing to save us.
We should really give a call to Mula Vakriti Mataji for digging all these stories up and spending years, or at least a lot of time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she traveled all over India and interviewed them. Yeah, it's an incredible book. It's a labor of love that really is a nice memorial for her. Yeah.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Visvarupa ki jai.